Good evening. I'm extremely happy to be here this evening here in Trenton, and I'm extremely happy to travel across the country talking about these issues and delivering this information. The FBI obviously is not extremely happy about the information that I've been bringing forth. I think that as we go along tonight, and I will cover the issues that are listed here, you will probably have many other questions, and trust me, any questions you have, any concerns you have, I am more than willing to answer. So while I may not address everything or things that you have a question about in this lecture or in this part of the program, I am more than willing to answer them. I'm not skirting anything, and come forward, please come forward with all your questions. One good thing I've learned, I went to do a lecture over at the Harriet Tubman School with Alumbe Broth and the Patrice Lumumba Association. And at that particular lecture, there was a great deal of questions, and there was some concern. People came to me, Brother Tyrone Washington and some of the other people came to me, and they were concerned that by me coming out of the belly of the beast, they had some questions even about my trustworthiness. And they were excellent questions. In fact, I even told the brother that night that these are the questions that we should ask every single person who come before us. The people who come before us have to be willing to handle the scrutiny and take on the questions that are asked of us. Because unfortunately, in our history, our recent history and our past history, too many people come out of nowhere and come before us and we don't question them. So I have no problem whatsoever, as I told him that night and I'll tell you tonight, if you question me, any concerns that you have about me, I will be more than willing to answer. I don't run for anything, because I know that what I am saying from the heart. I know that I am sincere about. I know that I have fought this battle even during the 9.5 to 10 years that I was in that agency, which made me the subject of several attacks. I have no fear whatsoever of the FBI at this particular point in my life. Even though I've gotten threats at my house, threatening for telephone calls. My daughter, who was 13 years old, wrote an essay that the school sent back home to me, talking about the fears that she had because of the threatening phone calls, and she's afraid that I'll go away and won't come back home. And I didn't even know she was writing this until one of the teachers sent it back home to me and saying, these are the fears that your daughter have. But that same daughter told me when we were discussing this, as I began to travel around the country one time, she said that, you know, at times I am afraid of losing my father, but at other times, if I know that if you don't go out and speak up, then I really don't have a father at all anyway. So her concerns are double, and even at 13, she realized the importance of coming out and giving the truth no matter what the consequences. And because it's more than just us involved in this. The consequences for me, certainly, and I can get into them more so later, have been pretty devastating. I mean, they raided the house of my mother and sister. This is during the time that I was with the agency, but speaking out and writing letters to the newspapers with a warrant. At the time they raided the house, they had a warrant for my deceased brother. They knew he was deceased because he had died in 1987 in police custody. And they had did a civil rights investigation at the time, so they had him listed as deceased. But they raided the house and said, we have a warrant for your deceased brother for a probation violation. He didn't show up at the probation officer's house. Now, I wasn't there. My mother and sisters was. Now, mind you, at this time, I was still an agent in the Detroit office of the FBI. But 3 months prior to this raid, I had testified against the FBI in a case where I told them about the FBI agents dressed as Klansmen at Quantico, Virginia. FBI agents failing to investigate civil rights cases and other things. I have testified about this, and this was their warning back to me, because one of the philosophies of the FBI that we need to learn more and more is that if we can't get to you, in fact, it is not always easy, or it's not always the right choice for them to get to you, because then it becomes too obvious, then we will attack what you love the most. And the pressure that we put on what you love the most, be it your mother, father, sister, brother, child, daughter, dog, whatever you love the most, the pressure we put on them will make you back up. But I knew this philosophy. So even after they did the raid, I asked my sister to produce identification as if she could have been a deceased black man. She was to have surgery the next day. Canvassed the block, surrounded the house, did all, and then called me immediately afterward in Detroit and said, listen, we made a mistake this morning. We raided your mother and sister's home. Now, if you want us to, we will go back out there and apologize. And this wasn't a warning, this was a threat, and I know the system. But in spite of that, this happened in 1991, in spite of that, when I called back home to my mother, she said, you better not quit now. She said, you can leave that agency when you want to, but you won't leave now. Because if you leave now, they have done exactly what they wanted to do. They have brought pressure on us that they couldn't bring on you, and that have caused you to leave this particular agency. So I stayed until 1994, still causing them problems, still gathering information and still taking it out, and still withstanding their attacks, simply because at my mother's urging, I was not going to let them keep me running. Or as Ralph Ellison says in The Invisible Man, the whole concept of the system is to keep the nigger running. And I was not going to allow them to force me into this position. So I've dealt with that. I know that kind of devastation. I had a vehicle that I was in that exploded during the time I was in the FBI after testifying about the racism and putting pressure on them and going to the press and talking about it. I had a vehicle that I was in exploded. And these are the kind of things that happen internally in that organization. To me and other agents, a few other agents who are willing to speak up, who they know that if they bring it to you, or their hope is that if they bring it to the general public, you will say, oh no, they couldn't possibly do that. That's not happening. He couldn't possibly do it. And they know that because they have spent millions and billions of dollars on their propaganda and public relations machine so that they can convince you that they wouldn't do anything wrong and that anyone who speaks up is in the minority and this is the person. The other reason they do these things is to let any other person, any other agent, any other individual who is willing to speak up to know, see, this is what we did to him. And what we did to him made him quit. And if you do it, then we'll put the pressure on you to make you quit. That's another reason why I had to stay in there, consistently stay in there and continue to get information on what they were doing. In the end, I truly believe that my being there, despite the hard time my brothers gave me for even joining this organization, I truly believe there was a purpose for me being there, to bring forth this information. I couldn't see it at the time, and my brothers definitely couldn't see it, because they tried to discourage me from joining, but there was certainly a purpose for me being there. I know and I suspect that almost everywhere I go, and it's not a matter of paranoia, it's just that I've been with this agency 9.5 years and I know how they work, that there are individuals in every audience, everywhere you go, who have the position or the job of reporting back to the FBI. Now, you have to understand, the FBI have recruited, in their entire history, thousands of individuals to come back and report information to the FBI. They can entice you with anything. They entice you with money. For some people, that'll work. For other people, they entice you because you're having some kind of extramarital affair or relationship, and you will bring them information and keep them silent. They entice you because they have pictures and information on you, or with IRS tax reports. They entice you also. It has not been difficult for them to recruit individuals in the black community, even in organizations that are fighting for righteous causes, for them to report on other blacks. They did it during the 60s when the racism was blatant, and they're continuing to do it into the 90s, and now these people who would report feel even more justified now because it's not as blatant as it was in the 60s. So I suspect everywhere I go that they know what I am talking about. But that's not I don't have a fear of that, and I don't say that from a point of being paranoid or afraid, because there's a difference between being cautious and being scared. Cautious is being wise. But you have to know exactly what is there, what you're dealing with this particular organization. And again, I was in this organization, so I know it occurred. I'm not speaking as a layperson. I know how they set up. I know how they operate. I know that informants are the #1 cornerstone of that entire organization. They don't care if you ever make an arrest, as long as you have a whole list of informants that consistently give you information on every single event that occur in the black community, the Latino community, any community that they're interested in, then you will find as an agent. So I understand that, but I have no fear whatsoever of that. And we can't, as a group of people, be subjected to be locked into a concrete black affair by this organization or by any other organization.